We've been married for 16 years. I am a 36-year-old F, and my spouse is a 44-year-old M. Our relationship has experienced its share of both highs and lows. Throughout our 16-year marriage, there has been no history of infidelity. However, we did encounter occasional disagreements and concerns about whether one of us was becoming too friendly or flirting with someone outside the relationship. At one point, I had some worries about the possibility of my spouse having an affair, but we openly addressed these issues and worked through them together, strengthening our trust and understanding in the process. Due to the physical and emotional abuse I endured from my parents and the traumatic assault by my boyfriend's father when I was 14, I now grapple with severe depression, anxiety, and PTSD. My struggles with anxious thoughts often challenge me, but I am actively addressing them through therapy. Despite these difficulties, my spouse and I are parents to two beautiful children, aged 4 and 6, and I am committed to creating a nurturing and loving environment for them despite my personal challenges. As my spouse continues to work, I take on the role of staying at home. We have a wonderful friendship with another couple who have been together for about 7 years, though unmarried, and they also have a 4-year-old child. Occasionally, they visit us, and on weekends, we arrange outdoor playdates for the kids to enjoy each other's company. It's heartwarming to see our children form bonds and have fun together, while we all cherish these moments of shared joy and companionship. As our neighbors reside just a stone's throw away on the same street, it has become customary for them to join us in gathering and relaxing while the kids enjoy their playtime. When the little ones retire to bed early, my husband and I extend our evenings, indulging in some beer or wine while we unwind with television. This delightful ritual is a recurrent joy, as we savor these moments together, occasionally joined by another couple for added merriment. On a few occasions in the past, we've admittedly had a bit too much to drink and found ourselves being rather silly, engaging in loud singing, laughter, and even dancing together. Amidst these moments, there were instances where she kissed me, and I allowed it to happen, leading to laughter and amusement. However, it's essential to clarify that I didn't experience any particular romantic feelings towards women. For me, those instances were just kisses, and I neither enjoyed nor disliked them in a romantic sense. They were simply lighthearted moments shared between friends. My spouse witnessed the situation and surprisingly didn't seem bothered by it. Instead, he found it amusing and made lighthearted jokes about the incident. However, her lover remained oblivious to what had happened, and when she eventually shared the incident with him, he became jealous and accused her of cheating. One night, as my husband and I were enjoying beers and watching TV, I noticed he was engrossed in texting on his phone. He assured me that he was just messaging his coworkers. Feeling a bit adventurous, I suggested we take a shot of tequila each, adding a touch of excitement to our evening. He takes a snapshot of the tequila bottle and beer and sends it to his friends. Shortly after, he asks for another shot, and we gladly oblige. Just then, our friend shows up, but she's unaccompanied. She explains that her partner dozed off while we were preparing the shots, and she probably received a text from him since I didn't reach out to her. We continue the fun and end up doing another 2 or 3 shots, along with a couple more beers in the company of our friend. As we immersed ourselves in watching music videos, she expressed the desire to dance with me. I agreed, and while dancing, she kissed me once more, but this time the atmosphere seemed different. The kiss turned more intimate. Surprisingly, my husband joined us, and at his suggestion, we all ended up heading to the bedroom together. Strangely, I didn't feel bothered by the situation. In fact, I found myself reasoning that this might turn out to be an intriguing and entertaining experience. We hadn't pre-planned or discussed any specific boundaries, so there were no established rules or guidelines in place. Unlike a scheduled event where everyone can openly negotiate their comfort levels and boundaries, this situation just unfolded spontaneously. I remember us all going to the bedroom, and my husband was supportive as he helped both of us undress. At that moment, we were still in the early stages, with nothing more than kisses exchanged between us. Husband enters me first with no condom, as is customary for us. He walks in and out a few times before approaching her. He continues to have solely with her. He goes away for a bit, then returns, and I suppose in my intoxicated head it's my time now. He resumes having with her. At this moment, I start to realize what's going on. I myself standing there, observing them engage intimately right in front of me. My state of mind becomes hazy, and I lay there, partially conscious, questioning the reality of it all. He employs the same techniques he uses with me on someone else, and then he finishes somewhere. He takes her home, while I'm left dealing with the consequences of overindulgence, feeling sick and regretful. Once we finally retire to bed after my intense bout of vomiting, I struggle to find rest. A few hours later, I wake up, unable to sleep as my mind keeps replaying the events that just unfolded. As I observed my spouse, it seemed like he had managed to remember all the little bedtime routines we usually go through before going to bed. In that moment, it became evident that he wasn't too intoxicated. It felt as though I had set the stage perfectly for him, expecting him to be with me, but instead, he chose to be with her. While lying there and waiting, I couldn't help but express my feelings to him. I let him know that I felt like a mere spectator, left out and excluded from the intimate encounter that had just taken place. He genuinely felt terrible about it and offered his sincere apologies. Feeling confused and hurt, I couldn't help but inquire about the reasons behind his actions. When I opened up to him about my feelings, I expressed how the whole experience made me feel inadequate, as if I wasn't good enough or desired, leading to a significant blow to my self-esteem. He assured me he would be honest and admitted that the reason he engaged with her was that it felt different and refreshing. However, this revelation left me feeling like a discarded, overwhelmed with emotions of hurt and vulnerability. I'm now left with lingering concerns about whether he will continue seeking that new and different sensation elsewhere. The image of him being intimate with her is etched in my mind, making it difficult for me to even look at or talk to him. The pain and sense of betrayal are still fresh, causing me to withdraw emotionally, unable to face him due to the hurt I feel. Is it acceptable for me to experience feelings of betrayal? I willingly consented when we all decided to be intimate together, and I didn't resist or try to stop it. I genuinely expected my turn to come, but it never did. Later, after he finished with her, I couldn't help but hear his groaning and witness his expressions. These emotions overwhelm me, and I'm unsure about the next steps to take or how to handle this situation. Exploring couples counseling or individual therapy to address this issue seems like sensible options. However, my main concern is whether I can endure this situation and find a way to cope with the intense pain I'm experiencing. I find myself in a difficult situation with no one to confide in, and I'm unsure about the right course of action. It has been 2 days since the incident, and he seemed apologetic yesterday. However, today, he became angry when I decided to sleep on the sofa. Initially, I agreed to do so, but I changed my mind after he requested it and promised not to engage with me until I was ready. The conflicting emotions and dynamics are leaving me feeling lost and unsure of how to proceed. Restless and unable to sleep, the event kept replaying in my mind, causing me to overthink and yearn to cry. But I couldn't shed tears as he was already asleep beside me. After about 2 hours of tossing and turning, I eventually moved to the sofa where I allowed myself to weep for nearly an hour. However, when he discovered that I had fallen asleep on the sofa, his anger flared up. The situation has become even more complicated and emotionally challenging for me to navigate. Now I find myself deeply upset and furious about his actions, especially when I realized he was not so intoxicated that he forgot I was there. It became evident that he deliberately chose to proceed with the other person because it felt new and exciting. Throughout the day he has been at home, but he hasn't lifted a finger to help the children with their schoolwork or take any responsibility. This behavior only adds to my frustration and disappointment in the situation. Since the incident, I found it difficult to even look at him or have any communication. This has led to him being upset with me, and I'm feeling lost and unsure about what to do next. The memories of what happened can't simply be erased, and while I may be capable of forgiving, forgetting seems impossible. I'm left wondering if forgiveness is even possible under these circumstances. If there's any way you can offer assistance or support, please reach out to me. I could really use someone to talk to during this challenging time. Not only that, but my instincts told me he was lying before things blew out. During that period, my husband and I were working to improve our relationship, and I was determined to continue on that path because I felt a sense of responsibility, even if it seemed insignificant. Back then, I couldn't see the point in potentially making the situation worse, especially because I was unaware of the full truth and the extent of the manipulations and falsehoods. While we were trying to mend our relationship, I had a gut feeling that he was lying, but I had no concrete knowledge of what had actually happened. This uncertainty made it difficult for me to understand the complete picture at that time. I started to question his claims, and whenever I pointed out inconsistencies, he would try to patch them up, leaving me somewhat unsure of whether to believe him or not. In an attempt to gain clarity, I asked to look at his phone, and he handed it over. As I flipped through the pages, he stood there, staring at me, which gave me an unusual and uneasy feeling. I could sense his anxiety as I delved into the extensive history of messages back and forth. Among them, I noticed some peculiar text messages that didn't seem to have any context. When I inquired about these messages, my husband responded with uncertainty, saying, "I don't know. That chick is crazy, and her messages don't make sense." The whole situation left me feeling even more puzzled and unsure about what was truly going on. Most of the time, I only partially believed him because it was evident that she had some personal issues. However, there was one text message that caught my attention where he asked her if she wanted the worm, and it sounded rather gross and peculiar. As I continued reading through other questionable messages that could lead someone to respond with "that's what she said," I couldn't shake the memory of the bottle of tequila from my mind. The whole situation seemed increasingly suspicious and raised more doubts in my mind. It turned out to be mezcal, not tequila, and my memory was correct. She received the worm when he poured her a shot, and they both acted surprised and laughed about it. Strangely enough, he never mentioned texting her about the worm from the bottle. I noticed the bottle was more than half empty, and it seemed possible that with a little stirring, you could easily get the worm into any shot glass you desired. The whole situation felt even more suspicious and added to my uncertainty about what had really transpired between them. Feeling the need to get some clarity, I devised a plan to put something to the test. While waiting to pick up the kids from school, I sent her a text expressing that I wanted to talk and clear some things up from that night. My intention was to see if she would contact him right away, and if he had anything incriminating on his phone related to the incident. This seemed like a way to gather more information and possibly uncover the truth behind what had happened. I went up to her at her door and asked if she had any recollection of anything unusual happening that night. She told me that she was completely blacked out and intoxicated, and therefore had no memory of anything that occurred. I then shared with her what had happened, and she acknowledged that it was messed up, but didn't elaborate further on the matter. The conversation left me with mixed feelings, as it seemed like she might know more than she was letting on. Yet her memory loss added another layer of uncertainty to the situation. After our conversation, I left feeling extremely uneasy. She barely spoke, trembling on the edge of tears, displaying a mix of astonishment, fear, and finally relief. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story. Upon returning home and realizing I had no concrete evidence, I decided to call him and ask if she had contacted him at all that day. He assured me that she hadn't reached out to him in any way. The whole situation left me even more perplexed and uncertain about the truth behind their interactions. Thankfully, we had security cameras installed throughout the home, so I decided to review the footage. What I observed on the security cameras is crucial, so I'll provide a detailed account. During our conversation, he confessed that he was also heavily intoxicated that night, and it significantly impaired his decision-making abilities. They were not inebriated. Their actions were deliberate and purposeful, leaving me with a strong impression that it was all premeditated. When she and I shared a kiss, he intervened and suggested that we take the gathering to the room. Later, while we were all listening to music, he left the room, leaving her and me alone without him. These intentional moves and the sequence of events made me feel even more unsettled and suspicious about the situation. Upon reviewing the video, I noticed that I was the first to go up the stairs, and she stayed behind, looking at him and asking, "Are you coming?" Unfortunately, when I tried to check the second camera to see his response, it had lost power and was offline. As I continued watching the footage from her camera, I saw her walk upstairs after he responded to her question. The missing footage left me frustrated, as it could have shed more light on the situation. However, the available video only deepened my suspicions about their actions and the possible premeditation behind them. As I continued watching the footage, I realized that I couldn't hear what he said due to the loud music, and the camera in the other room couldn't capture his response. It was unfortunate that there were no cameras in the bedroom where the incident occurred, but I was present and remember what happened. As mentioned in the previous article, there were cameras installed in other living rooms, providing some insight into the events leading up to the incident. He lingered for a moment, deciding to enhance the ambience by turning up the music. With a swift movement, he tidied up the scattered items and discarded a few empty bottles before making his way upstairs to the room. The transition was seamless, showing no signs of uncertainty or imbalance. Inside the room, she and I were engrossed in a passionate embrace, yet I couldn't shake off the feeling of unease being alone with her. Upon his arrival, a wave of relief washed over me. However, as previously mentioned, the focus seemed to shift entirely to him, leaving me feeling like a forgotten presence. In my inebriated state, I waited for my turn, but it never came. If you haven't read my earlier account, I had been lying there, waiting in vain. Once they were done, a strong feeling of nausea overwhelmed me, likely triggered by the movements on the bed while I was trying to sleep. The room seemed to spin around me, and I experienced that queasy sensation akin to being on a boat or in a moving vehicle after consuming too much alcohol. Disregarding dressing up, I hastily made my way to the nearest toilet, feeling the urgency to vomit. Fortunately, nobody followed me, as they all remained behind while she dressed. From what I recall, he was being helpful, assisting her in getting home, and I faintly heard him chatting with her near the door, urging her to leave by saying, "Let's go." I remember her firmly saying no before she peeked into the bathroom to check on me, asking if I was all right. I assured her that I was fine, but she seemed hesitant to leave. However, he insisted, urging them to leave together, saying, "Let's go." It appears he may not have been entirely truthful, as he later claimed to have helped her reach home quickly, and then returned to be with me while I was vomiting. The reality, though, was that he remained here all along, and I was left to deal with the discomfort on my own. Certainly, while I was present, I had no sense of time passing as I continued to vomit. I had no way of knowing how long it took him to bring her home or the duration of my sickness. Without any specific time references, I couldn't verify the accuracy of his account when I later checked the surveillance cameras. It became evident that he wasn't present during the time I was vomiting. His claim of being there didn't align with the evidence I found. Upon reviewing the footage from the cameras, it became evident that they were giggling as they descended the stairs. The loud music obscured any discernible conversations for me. They stopped at the elf on the shelf, which I had placed there for the kids. Amusingly, she couldn't resist touching it, causing another bout of laughter. I couldn't help but recall that the elf on the shelf is not meant to be touched, adding a touch of mischief to their encounter. After disappearing from the camera's view, they entered the room where the recording was paused. From the audio, I could hear him offering her some water, showing concern for her well-being. He inquired if she felt cold and suggested a sweatshirt. I observed him leaving the room and heading back to the kitchen area. There, he entered another room and appeared to examine the laptop. Eventually, he made his way to the children's room, seemingly checking on them to ensure they were fine. After some time, they reappeared and lingered for about 15 minutes before eventually leaving to go back home. Meanwhile, I was upstairs, vomiting and feeling unwell, while he was spending time with her and looking after her. Surprisingly, during that entire period, he never came upstairs to check on me. The cameras recorded him walking her home and then coming back. Only after he returned upstairs did he finally come to see me. During that episode of vomiting, I was experiencing dry heaves, where my body was persistently trying to expel something, but nothing else was coming out. I recall he offering me Tylenol, and despite my initial refusal, he managed to persuade me to take it. On the cameras, it's evident that he retrieved the Tylenol bottle and expertly poured out 2 doses. He then went upstairs to get me some ice water, showing care and concern. I remember him being helpful, assisting me in getting dressed and settling into bed, after which he took his leave, and I drifted off to sleep. The footage revealed that once he left the bedroom and descended the stairs, he prepared some food and drinks for himself. Enjoying his meal, he proceeded to turn off the lights, armed the home alarm, made sure all the doors were securely closed, and then made his way back upstairs. Witnessing all of this was truly heartbreaking, especially since he had left me alone during a vulnerable moment. While I was vomiting, I came to the realization that they weren't as intoxicated as I initially thought. It became evident that they were fully aware of their actions. This realization prompted me to take action, and I decided to go through his text messages on our shared mobile phone account. Accessing our mobile phone provider's website proved to be a challenge for me, since I had never logged in to monitor phone usage before. Consequently, I had to call customer support for assistance. With his assistance, I eventually managed to access the logs. However, it was too early to view the text logs for the previous several weeks. Nevertheless, the available text logs indicated that they had been exchanging messages regularly. When I glanced at his phone, I noticed a considerable number of messages, although they were not as detailed as the phone bill had indicated. I decided to focus on a few instances when their SMS exchanges lasted for hours. On one occasion, he called me before coming home and asked if everything was all right, to which I responded affirmatively. Later, he texted me while on his way home, expressing that he was feeling unwell. Upon his arrival, he began complaining about feeling nauseous, expressing that he might vomit soon and that he felt a migraine coming on. The distress was evident from the way he looked, appearing like someone suffering from a severe migraine. His complexion was pale, and he was sweating profusely, clearly on the verge of vomiting. Eventually, he went upstairs, where he indeed ended up vomiting dew. I inquired if she had sent him any texts that day, and he firmly denied receiving any messages from her. Skeptical, I asked if I could take a quick look at his phone to confirm. Reluctantly, he handed me his phone, saying, "Yeah, fine, here, take a look. I'll use the toilet while you check." As I suspected, he had deleted her texts. Upon reviewing the dates on the text logs containing lengthy messages to his phone, it became apparent that he had removed a significant amount of texts. At that moment, it dawned on me that everything was a deception. Normally, when he suffers from a migraine and starts vomiting, we stay by his side to support him. However, this time, I allowed him to deal with it alone, much like how he left me to handle my vomiting without any support. When he returned, he casually stated, "I'm going to bed," and asked for his phone. Recognizing the need for a conversation, I told him, "We need to discuss this." I requested him to reiterate certain parts of what he had previously told me, and he insisted that everything he said was true. However, as I maintained eye contact, he suddenly realized I was looking at the cameras, and his demeanor shifted. It became evident that he had lied to me yet again. In response, I questioned him once more, directly asking if he had ever deleted any text messages. He stuck to his denial, stating that all the messages were still present and nothing had been erased. Now that I've managed to get him to believe his own version of events, I courageously confront him with all the evidence. I plead with him to finally tell me the truth, but he chooses to remain silent. Despite my repeated attempts, he still refuses to open up and communicate honestly with me. As the memories flood back, I begin to panic, realizing that this manipulation and deception has been going on for far longer than I initially thought. The weight of this realization hits me, and I start to feel overwhelmed by the extent of the falsehoods and deceit that have been present in our relationship. One night he refuses to communicate with me, so I threaten to go over and tell her boyfriend everything. He assured me that he would open up, but unfortunately, he didn't follow through. I firmly demanded that he speak the truth immediately, warning that otherwise, I'd take matters into my own hands. As I approached the door, ready to act on my words, he finally broke his silence, pleading with me not to go and promising to speak up. I wait again, but he doesn't speak. So I walk over to the boyfriend and tell them everything. As I engaged in the conversation with the boyfriend, I couldn't help but notice my husband's agitated state through the window, pacing and anxiously staring from inside the house. After having the conversation with his boyfriend, I returned home to find my husband visibly unsettled, asking me with concern, "What did you say to him?" In response, I informed him that I had honestly shared everything I knew. Our conversation took on a brief back and forth nature, but I remained firm in my request for the truth. I emphasized that if we truly wanted to salvage our marriage, it was imperative for him to be 100% honest. I assured him that I could see through any falsehood, and genuine honesty was the only path forward for us. He finally mustered the courage to speak and admitted that they had been engaging in a prolonged flirtation, and he had even slept with her on 2 occasions. When I pressed him for more details, he revealed that these encounters occurred while her boyfriend was away for a few weeks. The first time they slept together, I was still sleeping, and my husband quietly left our bed to spend the night with her on her sofa. During the second incident, my kids and her son were playing together at my place. Her son asked for his iPad, and my husband agreed to retrieve it from their home. When he arrived there, he discovered her alone downstairs while her partner slept upstairs. My husband dragged her over the counter and into the kitchen. He didn't wear a condom all of the times, and now I see why he was so eager to go to her on our purported date. It became clear that there was no hesitation on his part, and certain conversations we had now made perfect sense in light of this revelation. The fact that they had been engaged in this behavior for a considerable amount of time left me feeling utterly lost and unsure of what to do next. The thought of leaving him seems like a reasonable choice. Doesn't it if I despise him and am disgusted by the whole situation. It appears that he is disinterested in our relationship, yet he pleads for me to stay, begging me not to leave him because he loves me. He tries to justify his actions, claiming to be an idiot and having no explanation for why he engaged in such behavior. However, despite his pleas, my decision to move on remains resolute. He admits that he developed a strong desire to be with her, and over time, the continuous flirting escalated the tension between them. When an opportunity presented itself, they acted on their impulses. According to his explanation, after the first incident, they both felt guilty and believed it was wrong, leading to a few months of restraint before succumbing to temptation again. The second occurrence took place after some time had passed, but it wasn't long before they found themselves in another situation, leading to the third time happening just around 2 weeks after the second. I'm afraid that everyone will find out what occurred, and this distresses me greatly. He purposefully placed her in front of me while I lay there inebriated. He managed to get me intoxicated. He manipulated the situation to get me drunk. Even though I only wanted one shot, he insisted on more. He left me alone as he attended to her. Now it's up to me to determine if I should continue in this marriage and attempt to forgive. Although I have been feeling emotionally vulnerable and overlooked lately, I cannot shake the feeling that he might be deceiving me. A part of me believes that we can find a way to make our marriage work, but I can't help but feel guilty for having such thoughts. The idea of getting a divorce weighs heavily on me, as I fear it will tear the family apart. I've expressed to him that he is a wonderful father and that we could consider shared custody, but he is adamant about keeping our family together with both him and his family. If I decide to leave and proceed with a divorce, I worry about the impact it will have on the kids, subjecting them to the difficult process of separation. Thank you for listening to the story to the end, and if you like it, please support us with a like as well as subscribe to our channel. Write in the comments what you think about the story.